What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2022 Toyota GR86. Huge thanks to Toyota for providing me with this awesome experience to review the new GR86. So about this car, well, I just have to say that I am incredibly thankful we even have a second generation version. In this, horsepower obsessed world we're living in these days, there aren't a ton of people that appreciate a small, lightweight, nimble sports car on its own unique platform and a two-door at that. I mean, this is an incredibly rare combination these days, especially at an affordable price. And so, if you're someone who's trying to get the most horsepower per dollar, there's other options out there. This is for the drivers that enjoy handling in corners. So as far as the looks here on the GR86, I think it looks really nice. Now they did do some dimensional changes here. So even though the styling is all completely new, it's also a little bit longer. It's 1 inch longer overall. It's on a 0.2 inch longer wheelbase. Also, it's about 0.4 inches lower. They really tried to lower the center of gravity. You also have a 0.4 inch wider track in the back. So I mean, from every angle, they kind of, made it a little bit more dramatic looking, I think, and especially up front there, I really love, you have nice, clean, simple headlights here. This is a premium model we're looking at, by the way. Nice aggressive front bumper there. I really like how it kind of comes to a point and kind of sticks out. It looks better in 3 dimensions than it does in pictures and video, I think, honestly. I just love the curvature of that nose, and then coming down to the sides here, you even have these fender vents now that are very bold with the way they come out, and the nice 18-inch wheels here. Now these are the premium wheels. You will get 17s on a base trim, and I'll show a base trim as well. But anyway, these wheels, they say, were inspired by Japanese swords, and it's a great look. I also love the running Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires here now on the premium versions. I also love how this vent not only helps with airflow, but it also extends nicely into this new side skirt, which really comes out fairly aggressively with how much it sticks out. Again, a much more dramatic look than the previous generation. And that sweeps right into the back there, where you have, first and foremost, you might see that ducktail spoiler, which is another premium feature. But even without the spoiler, I think it still looks really nice for that back end there. But just to illustrate how far they went to try and lower the center of gravity even further than the previous generation, even like, for example, the license plate mounting area has been moved from the trunk lid down to the rear bumper, just to get a tiny bit of extra weight just a little bit lower. And so little things like that show you just how much they obsessed over trying to really maximize this car and improve it over the previous generation. I also love how you have the reverse lights there in the lower part of the rear bumper, which also have the same kind of shape and design as the Boxer engine layout. Also some nice exhaust tips there with the nice finishers there that are pretty cool looking. The taillights and stuff also look really nice. I like how they have a little bit of an extra dimension to them. They're not totally flat like they might look in pictures. You have a little bit of a 3D effect there with the red part kind of coming out from the white part there. There's also other little details, like you have those little spats there right behind the rear wheels. That's also a nice little touch. You see the little arrow bits sticking out of the taillights there on the sides. Just all these little things that help tweak the airflow, getting all their little improvements where they can. I love even just where I'm standing here, you have these curves in the hood and how the hood rises up to meet the fenders there. And yeah, it's just a really great look. As far as the light weighting stuff goes, they also, they had an aluminum hood before, but now you have aluminum front fenders and an aluminum roof. So all that has also helped to keep the weight in check. But yeah, overall, I just think it's a really great evolution of the previous generation, and it makes it look more modern, a little bit more dramatic, and I think it's a really nice upgrade. As for the interior in the GR86, so it's very familiar if you're someone who's coming out of the old 86, but they did a lot of really nice improvements here to the interior. And one great thing is that whether you go for a premium or a base model, most of the core things are going to be the same. So they give you a lot of really good standard equipment, more so than what most companies give you with a base model. So it really comes down to just like a few things, and both interiors are very nice. But we're in a premium automatic here. First off, these seats. So we have these Alcantara and leather trim seats. They're mostly Alcantara. You just have a little bit of leather on the sides here. What I like about them is that they're perforated, which is good. I'm not a huge fan of Alcantara seats in general, but at least these have the perforation, so they breathe better than the old Alcantara seats that were previously non-perforated, like in my BRZ that I had back in 2013. And so these seats have really great support though. Bolstering is appropriate for a sports car, and they're all manual adjustments, even here on the top premium trim. Again, that's all about keeping the weight nice and light. 6-way adjustments, and just really good seats and just very comfortable. They're also heated here in the premium. That is one key feature of the premium. But yeah, really good seats. The cloth seats though in the base model are also very nice, just as supportive, same seat shape, just with the cloth on them and no heating, and that's it. But if you don't mind And I mean, you know, since it's Alcantara, it kind of feels like cloth to begin with. You know, you're not really sacrificing a whole lot aside from, you know, losing the heating function, but both seats are really great. The steering wheel here is really nice as well. So that's another thing where all models, even base models, get all leather touch points. So you get leather steering wheel, leather shifter, even a leather e-brake handle. And so all those main things you're touching all the time are always going to be leather in both models. But anyway, great steering wheel here, has a nice 9-3 grip, a nice little 10 and 2 notches. It's a nice and thin, skinny wheel. I really like they didn't try and beef it up too much. You have, you know, a few buttons here on the front of it. This one has a few more buttons since this is, again, an automatic. So you have the adaptive cruise control, which is something that you do get when you go for any automatic 86 here. And so that's not a premium only feature, which is kind of nice. The base model, you can actually get the adaptive cruise if you want. It also bundles together like an automatic emergency braking function, as well as lane departure warning, things like that. You can still get blind spot monitoring, like this one has blind spot monitoring and reverse cross traffic alert, but that's something you can't get on the manual. All the adaptive cruise stuff is only automatic stuff. But anyway, you know, you have nice paddle shifters here on the automatic one as well. And overall, just a really great wheel. I really like the little GR badge here on the bottom of it. And moving on to the gauges here in the GR86, also the same whether you go for a base or a premium. You have a nice 7-inch color display there on the left-hand side, or the left 2/3 of it, I guess I should say. It's really cool. It has an awesome startup little animation, which will kind of mimic the boxer layout of the engine. And you know, I love having the tach nice front and center, just an easy digital speedometer, and you know, not too complicated or anything. And just a few basic things of information here on the left-hand side. You go through your voltmeter and you know, water temp. You also have just basic trip information stuff, but you also can go and see like a little dyno graph illustration of where you're at on the dyno chart, which nicely highlights the fact that the torque dip is much improved over the previous generation. But then you also have a lap timer, G meter, great to have those. You also will have an option to display like your audio information, your safety information. Pretty simple, you know, it isn't super high tech or anything, but it's great that they add digital gauges to a vehicle that is so affordable like this is. But it is really cool that you can put it into the track mode here, and then you just have a bar style tach there, which is a very cool touch. And also here on the automatics, you also get a sport and a snow mode. You don't get those two modes in the manual. The sport mode does give you a little red ring, so that is something you won't be able to get on the manual transmissions. But that track, you know, setting is really cool, and a nice little feature there. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, all models also get an 8-inch touchscreen, which has standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's not wireless, but you know, good to at least have the wired-in CarPlay and Android Auto. Of course, it does have Bluetooth, wirelessly streaming, and all that. And it's pretty simple. It's not very high resolution or very high-tech feeling, but it works. You know, it's nice to have an 8-inch screen. Radio is very easy to tune thanks to having volume and tune knobs, which definitely feel a little bit more expensive than they did in the past. There's a few button shortcuts and all the basics. That's all you need. You know, basically, I think most people just use the smartphone integration and that's it. So it works really great for all that, and so nice to have that feature here. Coming down, you'll see your climate controls, which again are also the same whether you go for a base or a premium. You get dual zone auto climate control even in a base model, which is great. Really nice texture to these plastic knobs as well. They feel a little bit more high end than they did in the past. They were a lot cheaper feeling in the previous generation. Nice improvement there, and also just a few buttons here. I like that all of the buttons are also nice and large, so they're very easy to find whenever you're driving, and you know, it's not too distracting or anything. And also it's worth noting that all, even base and premium, all have a start-stop button, so there is no physical key anymore with the 86. It's just push button start on all models, so you get the proximity key as standard, and then you have this little makeshift cup holder slash bin thing here, which is nice to have, and then you have this center armrest, which is a nice improvement, because that's one thing I really wanted in my old BRZ was an armrest, because you didn't really have anywhere to put your elbow aside from just letting it hang. Now you have an armrest. It's nice and softly padded. It is a little bit loose, but this is also a pre-production early prototype, so the fit and finish in here might not be representative of what you're going to see on an actual production model. But anyway, it's nice that it splits in the middle and you open it up and you have two nice cup holders in there, as well as two USB jacks and an auxiliary jack still in there. And you also have a bottle pocket here in the doors too, which is nice, and it's a little bit of a more open bottle pocket than it was in the past, so you can fit even larger bottles in there if you'd like. But you know, like the door handles are pretty cheap plastic and stuff still. So I mean, this isn't a vehicle you're buying for a luxury car experience or anything, but just wanting to point out, you know, there are some parts that feel cheap. Another thing you probably won't be too worried about, but I want to mention, is the back seat here in the 86. So it is definitely on the tight side. It's honestly borderline unusable for someone. I'm 5'9". I can barely fit back there, but my feet have to be at an angle. I can't even have my feet straight on for sitting behind someone else that's 5'9" here. So, I mean, you know, it's basically the same back seat as what you got in the previous generation car. I did use that back seat for shorter people, and sometimes I would have to just slide the seat forward and just kind of get a little closer to the wheel when I was driving. It works in a pinch. It's nice to have a back seat because a lot of other competitors don't even have one at all. You know, it is nice for smaller kids, things like that. So I do appreciate that they still kept the back seat. It also does fold flat, so if you want, you can still fit, you know, 4 wheels and tires, you know, mounted in the back there. If you want, you know, your track set of wheels and tires, you can totally bring those along with you here, and it's great that you still have that kind of, you know, practicality and functionality. Also, moving on to the trunk space here in the 86. So that is another area where it's basically the same as the previous generation. You have a pretty small trunk. It's just very shallow. That's the main thing. So you can't fit anything that's too large through that opening because the opening is so small too. So anything larger than a carry-on size suitcase might be a little bit tricky, honestly. You know, it's not a lot of space. Now there's a decent amount of length to it and width. It's just, again, that opening is what really limits it, and the limited depth. And again, it worked for me for the couple of years that I owned my BRZ. It's just, again, you can't pack a ton of stuff in here, but at least you do have the back seat again, so there's some extra storage space there as well if you don't need that back seat. But yeah, so I mean, that's basically the whole interior here in the GR86 overall. They made all the key improvements that I think they really needed to make. All right, but let's start up and go for a drive. The GR86 here has basically a Subaru key that has the Toyota badge on it, but it's a really nice key. It's actually not too long. It's not too thick either. It's actually a pretty nice key, fits in your pocket pretty well. And yeah, but like I said, it's keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2022 GR86. So I have to mention that I'm only going to have about 15 or 20 minutes to drive this vehicle on the street. Most of the driving is going to be on the track. So if you want more in-depth street thoughts, you'll have to wait until I get one of these as a press vehicle. But I'm going to do my best here to give you the best first impressions drive I can here in my limited amount of time. So first thing you notice, so I actually did just drive briefly on track the previous generation version. So I do have a little bit of a fresh comparison between the old car and the new car, which I'll reference here as we're driving the new one here. I mean, I can tell immediately, even just dipping in very lightly into the gas, you have definitely more punch. So the torque comes on at like 3,700 RPMs now instead of like 6,600 like it was previously. And so, I mean, it's much more punchy in those lower RPMs, and you know, peak torque has also been increased, as has the power. I'll give all those numbers here once we do an acceleration. But the moment you've all been waiting for, let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. We'll put it in track mode. And here we go. Wow, sounds great. A little squirm there. Oh man. All right. Much more punchy than the old car. That felt really nice. Wow, I am pleasantly surprised. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be. They did a really huge improvement to this vehicle. So, I mean, you know, it's the engine went from a 2-liter to now a 2.4-liter flat 4 engine. And so they increased the horsepower by 23. It's 228 horsepower now, 184 pound-feet of torque. And so actually 0 to 60 time has dropped by almost a full second. And now it is a 6.1 second 0 to 60 for the manual. It's 6.6 for the automatic. The automatics, believe it or not, were like 8 seconds 0 to 60 times before. I mean, even a bigger improvement there for the automatic. I mean, but you know, what other sports car in its evolution and its next generation gives you almost a second faster 0 to 60? It's really a huge leap whenever you know, actually look at it in the context of, you know, how cars, you know, advance throughout their generations. And so I also love the sound. So the sound is improved partially because, you know, you have a larger engine. You also have a larger diameter center pipe, so that's going to give you a little bit more free-flowing sound. They also, of course, changed the intake and all that kind of stuff to be freer flowing to help with that extra power. You also do have an active sound enhancement. It's a dedicated separate little speaker that pipes in engine noise, but it's real engine noise that it pipes in. It doesn't sound artificial at all to me. It's not coming through the normal stereo speakers, and it just sounds really good. And so it's worth noting, in the manuals you get that sound basically all the time, they said. In the automatics, there's a couple different, when you're in normal mode or something like that, it'll be a little bit quieter, and then when you go up to the sport and the track modes, it will give you that louder piped in sound. Oh, but it sounds really nice, and it's really punchy now too. I'm pleasantly surprised with how much power this is really, you know, it does a really good job. And of course, I mean, it's not like we're overwhelming these tires. We have the 215 wide Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, but great to have that extra grip if you're someone who likes the original 86 ethos of having, you know, a back end that's a little more tail happy. You can still get the primacy HP Michelin tires on the base trim, and so you know, it really comes down to what your preference is. But I think most people are going to appreciate the extra grip, especially now you have more power. You know, I think the Pilot Sport 4s are going to be, you know, probably the more exciting way to go for most people. Oh yeah, this is great. This really, it feels so good. The red line is still about the same as before, so it still red lines at about 7,500 RPM, so nice and strong there for that. And it's great that you have a nice large power band to work with. A lot of other vehicles these days keep going lower and lower with their power bands, and I love that you still have, you know, a nice high red line in this. Other things, you know, I still love this 6-speed manual transmission. They did do a bunch of enhancements to it, so it's now you know, beefed up to handle the extra power, of course. They also are using a lower viscosity oil, and they changed some of the bearings and stuff inside of it as well. So actually, whenever it's cold, they say it'll have a little bit of a smoother performance. And then of course, once it's warmed up, then it'll still be really great with its performance as well. But so that's great. Also, they actually made the electric power steering smaller and lighter, so that's part of how they help to keep the weight in check on this vehicle. And so as far as steering goes, still feels really great. Still is a pretty quick you know, steering ratio. Really darty still, like it really just wants to, you know, dive in and attack. But I'm going to do another acceleration. This time I'm going to put in track mode, so it turns off traction control. And let's go for it again. It'll spin even more there. Oh, I love that little shift light too. It's kind of fun the way they have that integrated in with the yellow part for the tack there. But coming up some other corners here, and it just feels so direct and so sharp. And this is the kind of feeling that you only get with something that has this low of a center of gravity, that's rear-wheel drive, that has, you know, good balance to it. It's about 53% of the weight in the front, 47% in the rear, and these are also pretty light too. So curb weight on these, they gained about 75 pounds or so over the previous generation, but they're still very light. The manual base trim is about 2,811 pounds, they said. I think you go up about 40 pounds or so for the automatic, and then I think a premium model only adds about 20 pounds or so, so not too bad as far as all that goes. But yeah, this thing really, I mean, it's way faster. I mean, someone that likes this but just, you know, wanted more power from the previous generation, definitely you have to test drive one of these. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised just how punchy this thing is. I mean, I own a 480 horsepower Mustang Bullet, so I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good appreciation for high horsepower stuff, and this thing still is impressing me with just how it's accelerating and gaining speed. And I'm only playing around like 5,000 RPMs here. I'm not even, you know, mashing this thing to its peak. It still makes peak horsepower, by the way, at 7,000 RPM, so you still have to wring this thing out. It's just that you have that extra torque, and yeah, that really is the big differentiator here. Oh, I love this. This is a huge improvement. Just like how I was really excited whenever Mazda with the Miata went from the ND1 to the ND2 and raised the red line, gave it more punch and more power. It made that car so much better in my opinion. And this is kind of that same ethos of, you know, they made the motor stronger, gave you that nice boost in torque, great horsepower jump. I mean, yeah, this thing is fantastic. It's so enjoyable. Man, oh man. They did a bunch of stuff to make it more rigid as well too, and I mean, I'm not someone who can really pick apart those types of things extremely well, but what I can say is that, I mean, it does feel a lot more planted, even, you know, when I, again, don't have the traction control on. I'm still in the track mode here, but it's so planted. You still have the torsion that limits the differential there in the back, and of course that 0.4 inch, again, wider track should help things even be a little more planted here, but it just feels so poised, so strong. And again, I can just sit in third gear here, and on, you know, your average back road, plenty of power here. Oh man, this thing is really impressing me. I was a huge fan of the previous generation. Obviously, I owned one. I loved it. But I was kind of curious to see just how much this would be improved. This is one of the vehicles I was most excited to review this year, and so I came in with, you know, pretty high expectations and hopes, and it still managed to exceed those. And oh yeah, it's so light and sharp. Oh man, I love taking this thing around corners. It just makes you want to go and push it more and more and just do more corners and more corners. But still, again, it doesn't shy away from the straightaways because it still has plenty of power to, you know, get you well up over the speed limit if you want. And man, this thing, it's crazy though how much I really don't find myself shifting a whole lot. And that's something with the previous generation I was shifting, I think, a little bit more for sure. And this, I'm just able to leave it in third gear and just play with that extra torque all day long. Oh, it is great. Now the acceleration. It's really the perfect sweet spot, I think, of you can still ring it out, you can still drive this thing super hard and not be doing insane speeds, but it's giving you more power and it's giving you, you know, a little bit more of a gratifying experience whenever you do those accelerations. Oh, man, I love this thing. And so now we're on a little bit of a smoother road here, more gentle corners. But the whole thing does feel a little more solid. You know, they said they increased the rigidity. There's a new O-ring kind of set up for reinforcements there towards the back where the rear seats are. They also have a bunch of subframe enhancements, and they did a bunch of stuff to, you know, stiffen up the structure here. I also like that the steering weight, by the way, is still, you know, a little bit substantial with its weightiness, but it's not overkill, and it's really the perfect weight. I think they really did a good job of nailing all the driver inputs here. Brakes also feel pretty good. They did improve the brake pad material, but the brakes are the same size as the previous generation. The brakes, you know, have a little bit of dead travel to them, and then they start biting really nicely as you know, get onto them there. But yeah, throttle response is immediate, you know, just like you would expect from a vehicle like this. And they actually said that one of the unique things they did here with the GR86 is that, you know, compared to the BRZ, they did give this a little bit of a sharper throttle, supposedly. I will be driving the new BRZ here in a couple of weeks. I'll be able to give you guys a more direct comparison of how they feel then. But yeah, overall, very, very impressed. So that's basically the end of my street drive here. So yeah, I mean, the last little thing to mention, visibility is still excellent here, just like it was in the previous generation. You still get a little bit of a curvature from that fender, so it's really easy to place that wheel whenever you're trying to hit apexes and stuff. Speaking of apexes, the GR86 was a blast to drive on track. We were only doing one lap each time and immediately pitting, so we didn't get a chance to push the brakes too much, but they did seem to hold up pretty well after several hours of journalists doing one lap at a time. The fuel system has been improved for better track performance as well. The cooling system has also been improved, and all that stuff held up well too. The chief engineer of the GR86 also detailed the mechanical changes they made to differentiate it from the BRZ, and said originally it was just going to be damper settings and power steering changes. But they decided then to go further and added different front knuckles, bushings, and springs, along with unique stabilizer bars connected directly to the subframe. The ECU tune was also changed to focus on quicker engine response, and so it sounds like the BRZ will be slightly more focused on road comfort, but thankfully I'll be able to try out the different feeling of the BRZ very soon, and will report back with my impressions, so be sure to subscribe for that. As for my experience in the 86, the main takeaway I got from the track time was that both the premium and the base models are very fun in different ways. On the grippier Pilot Sport 4 tires, the 86 feels incredibly sharp and nimble with plenty of grip, but a back end that still will play around with you a little bit. But the base car on the Primacies was more of a silly, less serious experience. It still had great handling and is an excellent sports car even with its lower limits, but it was almost as happy as a Hellcat if you punched it mid-corner. Honestly, I mean, I had a way bigger grin on my face after driving the base car, even though I was likely doing slower laps. Both are great in their own ways. It'll just come down to what kind of experience you're looking for. I mean, but for me, you know, punching it mid-quarter and just doing enormous slides was definitely the more fun experience, and so I loved that a lot. But if I were placing an order though, I think I might actually go for that base model, especially now that, you know, the base model comes with so much standard equipment. As far as pricing goes between the two trims, Toyota hasn't finalized pricing for them yet, but they said it will start comfortably under $30,000 including destination. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can get more horsepower for $30,000 elsewhere, but those competitors won't be lightweight, low center of gravity, rear-wheel drive sports cars on their own unique platform like the 86 is. In my mind, the only real competitor that will offer a similar experience is the Miata, which offers less horsepower, but in exchange you get an even lighter car and the fun of a convertible. But if you're someone who wants a hardtop coupe, or you want something with a bit more interior space for a daily driver, I really think the GR86 hits a sweet spot with its focus on fun and not on numbers. And it does it all for an affordable price. Cars like this are rare these days and likely won't be around much longer, so kudos to Toyota for continuing to make one of the last simple, lightweight sports cars on the market, and not only keeping it around, but making it as fantastic as it is when they didn't even have to do a second generation, but yet they did it and they made it really, really good. And so I'll say it again, I absolutely love this thing. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.